Welcome back to the Boomerang Podcast. I'm Matt, and I'm here today with Mr. Todd Wood. Todd, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. Honored.
Thank you. With a little technical difficulty, but I think we're good. I've seen you're doing a lot of work in the patriot community, and my audience is nothing but that. They're people that love the country, that understand, what's going on is just it's absurd, right? Tell us a little bit about what you're doing, what you represent, kind of what your whole game plan is in this whole crazy thing.
Yeah. So I reinvented myself a few times. I flew for the Air Force back in the day. I traded on Wall Street for about 20 years, emerging market debt. And then I left the street and started traveling around Eastern Europe primarily at the time because I learned Russian back in my college days and just made a lot of relationships over there. And then I get a call from the Washington Times. They wanted me to write for them and write a column and kind of develop coverage in that region, which I did. And then I realized that nobody in the U.S. knew anything about what was going on over there at all. So I actually went to the Times and tried to kind of plug and play what I was doing with them. And they didn't really get the vision. So I just started it myself. And that's grown into really a global media network. I mean, we have 13 digital sites around the world and growing. So from, Eastern Europe to the Balkans and the Middle East down to the local level in Montana and other states. And, got 7 statewide papers, got a military channel, Hispanic channel. So we're doing a lot of video with Lindell TV and with, we're with Frank Speech and all of that with other syndicated partners. So we're trying to be really a wire service without all the globalist spin, just to bring the truth to people. I don't care where it lands. The GOP doesn't like us in Georgia, and that's fine because we've added a lot of corruption there. But we just want to become a real trusted news organization that people can look at and not question what they're reading.
Yeah, we so desperately need one. It's like you turn on any of the news, Fox or any of these guys, it's all fake.
Yeah.
You have an economic background. I mean, what's sort of your take on the state of the banking system? What's sort of your take on the state?
Well, yeah. In fact, I wrote a book about it. I wrote a book about it about a decade ago because I was trading on the street, traveling in, and I would see we'd have countries come to us on the trading desk and say, "Hey, we want to float a few $100 million of bonds, right?" And or corporations or whatever, and we'd go to the market and there'd be no buyers because it was just too risky, or the rate would be too high and they just couldn't pay that kind of interest on the debt.
Right.
So I realized that at some point with our growing fiscal irresponsibility, that there will come a time and place when the bond market realizes that the U.S. has not the ability or the will to pay back the massive amounts of debt. And this was 10 years ago. Now it's, quadrupled. So we're in a real precarious position as far as reserve currency issues, as far as interest rates, as far as inflation, as far as cost of capital for businesses. And it's not going to get any better. It's going to get a lot worse in the meantime. So I think, your business, gold, for instance, is right up that alley, man. I mean, people need a place they can store value, and precious metals are definitely one of those areas for sure.
Well, thank you for the endorsement of Midas Gold Group. No, I'm just joking.
Well, I mean, I believe it, right? I mean, I know nothing 100%. About your company, but
yeah, it's definitely a good place to store money. I mean, I look at these BRICS nations, and what they're doing is they're giving up the dollar as their reserve currency, right? And they're going to the gold-backed yuan, however you want to pronounce it, that China's offering, right? And my kind of theory has always been, okay, well, those dollars don't just disappear. They're going to flow back to the U.S., saturate our money system. And then like what you said, it's like, who the hell wants our bonds? Right?
Yeah.
Who's going to buy them? I mean, who is buying? Is it just the Federal Reserve? I mean, are they the ones that are just keeping this whole charade, going? Is that they're doing?
Yeah. So the Fed has been an active market participant in the bond market for a long time now, for 2 decades. I mean, that's why rates went to zero, which is abnormal. The average interest rate on the 10-year bond is 5%-ish around there. We're getting back to that now, but we had 2 decades of essentially zero free money. And that really that caused a huge redistribution of wealth from the middle class to the class that had assets, where that made a difference. And then it just racked up their balance sheets, and we got poorer and poorer in the middle. And so, but where do you go? We're the cleanest shirt in the dirty pile right now, as far as different currencies. And I don't want to put my money with the Chinese Communist Party, no matter if they say it's backed by gold or whatever. So I don't know where this is going to go. I just know that everything's really bad, and it's going to get a lot worse, and it's not going to look like what we have right now. That's what I do know.
What do you suspect? I mean, what are your theories? Give me some ideas that you have.
We need some kind of store of value that is probably benchmarked against a basket of assets, whether that be gold, water, land.
Oil.
It can't be fiat, right? It needs to be benchmarked against something that people can touch and feel and use and see, and like the gold standard used to be. And that caused its own problems because it caused real crises. When J.P. Morgan had to bail out the United States in the early part of the 20th century. So those things kind of come around, but it does prevent the kind of just reckless spending, because right now you have this apparatus, this blob that is spending money that it just prints and it controls, and we're backing it, but we don't get any of the benefits, right? So they're just continuing this big circular money laundering scheme, essentially, because Ponzi scheme, because you're sending money, 80 billion to Ukraine, and I would bet money in Vegas that most of that comes back to the coffers of the DNC, of the different NGOs or whatever they're affiliated with, this whole massive apparatus. And we've done a lot of the investigations on the smurfing that's going on in the different political races, where you'll have grandma that's donated 40,000 times a day for the past 20 years to some Democratic DA candidate in another state. I mean, it makes no sense, right? So this is the carousel that's going on, and because they can control the money and just print what they want, that's how it works.
Right. Tell us a little bit about your work in the election sphere. What are you doing over there? Obviously, you have a financial background. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing in the political realm.
Well, we are an investigative news organization, right? So I have a lot of reporters literally around the world and in different states, and we have busted a lot of the election fraud. People call Florida the gold standard of elections. It's not. It's one of the most corrupt states out there. I'll give you an example. They set up a lot of these machines so that they're creating, for instance, Miami-Dade County in 2020, they had some precincts that came in and 20% of their ballots that were cast were logged as blank ballots, meaning they printed nothing on the ballot. So in Miami-Dade, that's 5 million people. That's 1 million people that they said came in and didn't vote, basically showed up and didn't vote. So what does the machines do? They allocate those to whatever candidate they think the vote was supposed to go to. So that's a massive shift of votes. We brought that to the Secretary of State in Florida, and I'm on the Miami-Dade Republican Executive Committee, and so I've been involved in a lot of this. And we also showed them a lot of fake voters on the voter rolls, 50,000 people that don't exist. And their comment to us was, hey, sue me. So this is going on all over Florida. And it's not just Florida, it's every state. But Florida is supposed to be the gold standard, and it's definitely not.
Yes, I was talking to Chris Jersky about that.
Yeah, he's been involved.
With the fake addresses and they just so happen to get that guy. I was just talking with Chris about it, and I also spoke to Don Hyatt, who's running for the county recorder out here.
Cool.
And I feel like what I learned from Don Hyatt, who's running out here, I'm in Arizona, is that you need IT people in these positions, like a county recorder. Like certain positions in government have to have certain, you have to have certain credentials, a certain background. They can't just be any willy-nilly candidate, because otherwise, who the hell knows, a computer program? I certainly don't, and these computer programmers would run circles around me and the general public because no one has any clue. No one has any idea.
For sure.
So
and then you add that they won't report we found where these ballots were being generated on these reports from machines that were supposed to be presented as open records for the public. And we pushed to get those in multiple states. And guess what Florida does, or in multiple counties in Florida? They pass a law called the Election Integrity Act, where they prevent anyone from seeing that information. That happened last year. So, I mean, it's all the way up through the Florida administration. It's an election fraud cartel. It is a way to keep power, and they're not giving it up. And we're continuing to push, and hopefully something will break, literally across the country in different states. Every state kind of does it different, but the fraud is everywhere for sure.
Right. What else do you work on in the political realm? I've just recently started coming across your material, so I'm asking you on behalf of myself and my audience, who probably doesn't, a lot of the guests I have on, they have no idea who these people are.
Yeah.
But it's like, I feel like somebody like you in the coming months and coming years is going to be a household name.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we're trying. We were early because I was in Eastern Europe. We were early on the Ukraine issue. I have a team over there, I still do, We reported a lot in 19 and 20 on what the U.S. government officials were doing in Ukraine. It's essentially an organized crime state, and it's a place to launder money, to run info ops against opponents like Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump, to traffic humans, develop bioweapons, all of it, go down the list. It's a really bad place, and we're funding it. And so we broke a lot of this information, and for that we were deplatformed, debanked, death threats, computers blowing up. I mean, banks being wiped, accounts being wiped to zero, all kind of crap, kicked off all the Google stuff. So we've had to survive and thrive. It's made us more resilient. But so yeah, CDM.press is the main site. Everybody can go there and see all the different reporting we do in different areas of the world. And so, appreciate that. And we're just trying to get the truth out there in multiple ways. We just broke a huge story in Georgia over the weekend where a honeypot operation under the Gold Dome in the Georgia Capitol was outed at one of the local Republican clubs, and they were blackmailing, legislators and lobbyists and all of this. So, I mean, we have witnesses to that being said by GOP officials on tape on the website. Our Georgia Record, the GeorgiaRecord.com is our Georgia paper. So that's there. That's the kind of stuff we're doing. But, so we brought that, I guess, credibility from our reporting years ago into what we're doing now. And we're still involved overseas. But those are kind of our big areas. We were involved also in the medical tyranny stuff with the vaccines. We were putting out interviews of vaccine injured in 21 that nobody wanted to touch, and nobody would, you put it up and it gets taken down. So we got taken off all the major channels. We're back on X now. So if people are around, they can go to find us on X and and follow us, because we got to rebuild. But anyway, it's a process, man.
Yeah, I heard a lot of these politicians were also taking payments from places like FTX.
Oh yeah.
Right?
That's what that was part of the money laundering scheme, right? I mean, you send money to Ukraine, and then he donates, he gets the money somehow through a defense contract relationship or whatever, and then it gets donated to a Democratic politician or a PAC or whatever. And it's just a big, I have sources on the ground in Kiev, and they call it the carousel, right? And it's the nickname for Joe Biden was the American gangster. So I mean, it's literally what's going on over there. And now he's running this whole thing. So people got to get involved. I'm sure they hear this all the time. They got to support the right businesses. They got to unplug from the matrix, as I call it. Stop sending your money to places that really literally want to kill you with poison, or take your money, or take your farm, or take your freedom, and support businesses that are not part of that and are trying to rebuild the economy.
It makes me wonder, what do you think Amazon's role is in all this? Do you really think Jeff Bezos invented Amazon? It just seems like another money laundering scheme to me.
You know what, Matt? I don't believe a damn thing I learned for the last 80 years, man. I mean, I question everything. I mean, you look at Zuckerberg. Of course, that was some kind of op to make him a billionaire and control him.
That's what 107 said. Is that Mark Zuckerberg was just the face of Facebook, right? It's really a creation of Defense Advanced Resources Project Agency.
Exactly. And and people say, well, I use their technology, I'm against them, and I'm staying on Facebook. And I'm like, that's the wrong decision. You know why? Because they're taking you and they're seeing everybody you talk to. You start this group chat and you're a keyboard warrior. Guess what? They got all of those people now. They know where they are. They know where their family members are. They know if they have family in the military. They're starting to surveil their phones, all AI generated. And if they can push a button and say, tell me about Todd Wood, and boom, the whole, waterfall shows up of everybody he knows, everybody he's talked to, everything, where his pressure points are, everything. So that's what Facebook does for you. So get off Facebook, get off all the commie platforms, I tell people.
I'd love to see your Wikipedia page and what they say there.
Well, they took it down. Yeah, it doesn't exist.
Those are always fun, looking at people's Wikipedia pages.
Yeah, oh yeah, man, it's great. Yeah, racist Nazi freak, who runs a far right extremist website. I can make it up now.
Yeah. How do you root out this corruption? I mean, I've asked people like David K. Clements and all these different people, and it's like on the one side, I'm hopeful, I'm a very positive person.
Me too.
But at the same time, I also see it from the side of people are like, what's being done? How do we even break through this whole, bureaucracy, or whatever you want to call it? Because you have the smoking guns, you have the evidence. So does, Mark Cook. So does Jersky. So do all these different people, right? How do you do it? how do we get this stuff fixed and changed?
I get that a lot on a comment on an article, and nobody's going to do anything. It's a waste of time. And I'm like, okay. And then they say, who's going to do something about it? What are you going to do about it? And I'm like, no, dude, what are you going to do about it? I'm like,
Right.
Turn it right back on you. What are you going to do? What are you doing about it in your community?
Right.
Are you on the golf course? Are you sitting behind your computer all day long? Or are you out at the Board of Education meeting, or at your church lighting up your pastor because he's sitting here talking this cultural Marxism and how we got to be good to transgenders, which is, I mean, come on. I mean, you get in their face, not violently, but just don't accept the garbage they're feeding you. And it starts at the local level. And there's plenty around you. I guarantee you, no matter where you are, there's plenty of stuff going on around you that you could push back on very easily. And it makes a big difference.
It does. Bill, who introduced us, I mean, he goes to our Board of Supervisors meetings here every Wednesday. I mean, I don't know. Have you heard of Mickey Klon?
No.
So Mickey's somebody, she's got a program called Bonds for the Win. And she goes after their bonding and serves them, liability, lawsuits for personal liability, where we have people that are sitting on our Board of Supervisors passing laws, 15-minute city laws. They're already passing here in Arizona. No one bats an eye. And she's going down there, and because they're not bonded, they're not elected, they've never sworn an oath, she's handing them personal liability lawsuits of $21 million a person.
Yeah.
There's no more like, I'm doing my job. Is that what people need to do? What else can people do?
Well, I've heard of that. I don't know the legal ins and outs of that whole process. Good on her if that works. I mean, just you'd be surprised. Well, media is a huge one, right? I mean, and so that's a big one, is to stop supporting these media organizations that are literally working for the other team. Because if you watch them, you're giving them your advertising dollars, whether you know it or not. You're giving them ratings. You're giving them, surveillance. I mean, that's so get off all of that. And you will be surprised at how just one little paper in a state or a country or a town that outs and shines a little light on what's going on in the local jurisdiction makes a huge impact. I mean, seriously. I mean, and so we always say, hey, if you see something going on, let us know, and we'll try to get it out if we're in that area. If not, find another paper or another group that can shed some light, because they're controlling the media, so that is how they do all this, right? They killed Kennedy because nobody knew they killed Kennedy, and they got away with it because nobody knew it for 60 years, or they thought maybe, but now we know. And so that couldn't have happened if the whole country knew that the U.S. government had a huge assassination plan to destroy the elected president, which is going on right now again. So, you just have to find a way to fight back in your own way.
Yeah, now they don't just do it through assassination of killing; they do it through assassination, character assassination, right?
Yeah, sure.
They take down your character.
Yeah.
What other kinds of stuff do you work on? I'm still learning about you. Tell me more about what you're working on and what you're doing.
We have an armed forces.press channel. It's our, it's sick. I'm an Air Force grad down in Colorado. So where did you say you're in Arizona?
Arizona, Phoenix.
So we're big into that. We started an organization called stars.us, STARRS.us, where we have a lot of academy grads trying to fix the academies because they're garbage right now. So that's one big push. I wrote a lot of books. You can go to my website, ltoddwood.com, and check out all the different, kind of historical faction novels. And I just released a book, a nonfiction on the Iranian resistance. I've spent a lot of time with them in their camps in Albania and in Paris. And that's a whole nother fascinating, timely situation where, this is a theocracy that really is opposed to the kind of civilization we want to believe in, live in. And so if you know how to take them down internally is really important. So that's a great book if you want to check it out. It's called Paying the Price, the untold story of the Iranian resistance. And these are kids. I mean, it's a 40 years old organization, but the regime has executed 130,000 of them. So they'll have like a rally in downtown, and a bunch of girls, a lot of them are women, will show up, 16, 18, 15. They'll round them up, kill them all, and then put the pictures of their bodies in the paper and say, hey, if you know these girls, come get them, if you want the bodies. So this is a really evil regime that's controlling the Persian people, and it needs to be removed. And it can be done internally and doesn't need our dollars, or just needs the U.S. government to kind of allow them to do what they want to do, because we've been one of the biggest impediments to actually letting them function in their own country, which is not cool.
Yeah.
So
2024, what are your thoughts in terms of because my whole thing is that it's, like I said, I spoke to Don Hyatt here last week. He came in, I think, in the studio maybe Thursday or Friday of last week. And his whole platform that he wants to run on is county recorders. He wants to get rid of the Dominion machines.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you see happening? These machines, they're not going anywhere between now and the election on November 5th.
Probably not. I actually don't know what's going to happen, and I used to stay up worrying about that because I've got kids, I'm like, what's going to happen? And I kind of got to the point where that's not something I can do something about like right now, but I can kind of push for ways, kind of asymmetric warfare ways to take down that, or to work against it, or to expose what's actually going on. And again, I don't know where the break's going to come, but this thing is so complicated, and it's a sophisticated, complex system they built. And so we have to find ways to take it down, and to kind of that game, what's it, Jenga or whatever, you pull the blocks out underneath. That's what I think is happening. We're going through that process right now, and we just have to keep that pressure up. Like this honeypot story we put out over the weekend. That's huge. So we're going to dig into that and find out where those tentacles go. And we know, but we've got to be able to prove it, right? So there's a lot of cartel activity in North Georgia. That's another area we're looking at in the mountains. I got a report this morning that a small little county with a one-man county government's running a $50 million operation for a golf course and losing like $25 million a year on the golf course. So this is obviously, carousel money going through there somehow. Right. So this is happening in a lot of places.
I guess it comes down to, you have to expose it, and people have to wake up to it, right?
Yeah,
that's the only way.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that how people get involved? Is they realize kind of what you said. It's like, hey, what are you doing? Right? When you're asked, hey, what can we do? Yeah. What are you doing? It's almost like people have to be forced into that scenario.
Well, I have no problem shaming people in a nice way. I mean, like, dude, get off the golf course. What are you talking about? I get this. What pisses me off is I'll get some guy. He's a retired general, or he's a retired director at a large corporation, and he'll be like, "Why are they doing this?" And I'm like, man, if you're still like at the place where why are they doing this, and you don't realize we're in a full-blown Marxist revolution here, combined with a fascist global government they want to install and to take away your kids and your grandkids' freedoms, and you don't get that yet, I mean, I can't help you. I'll find somebody else. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at, because 20-30% of the people aren't going to get it, or don't want to get it. Maybe it's too scary. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, it's like, at what point do people get it? And everybody always says, oh, they, right? I love this term, they. It's like, who is they? They, we've been saying it our whole lives, including myself. And it's like, that's the deep state. When we say, oh, they do this. It's like we just use it. You ever notice that? That term, they?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
it's just silly to me.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm sure I'm guilty of it too, but I've learned a lot over the last several years about who they is, and you can go down those rabbit holes, but it's obviously something very dark is going on, and it's bad. I mean, they're mutilating children's bodies, and everybody's calling it okay. I mean, that's not okay, right? I mean, to take a kid from a family at 10 years old, brainwash them and tell them a girl, she's a boy, and then take the kid away. It just happened in Montana, and take them to another place where they can actually mutilate them before they're pubic. I mean, it's horrible, man. I mean, that kind of crap can't go on. So find a way to oppose it.
It's sick. Sick is what it is. You're a commodities guy. I mean, what do you foresee happening? I'm a gold company, right?
Yeah.
What do you foresee happening? I mean, are the banks, you think they're going to go on? I mean, what is the CBDC? My take on it has always been, it's a consolidation of the banking system, so that eventually you're going to bank directly with the Federal Reserve. So the way I've kind of looked at it is like, okay, we know the ending to the movie, right? We know that, hey, we're going to be banking directly with the Fed, right? Or this is at least what they want. What's going to transpire between now and that time where they try to implement it?
You've got a kind of a war going on between the old fiat system that they're trying to keep alive long enough to harvest as much wealth as they can from it and maintain power before it collapses. And they realize it's a Ponzi scheme and it can't go on forever. So the CBDC is a new way to control, because financial control controls everything. It controls food, it controls, wealth, it controls your life. So if you can't transact, then you got a real problem. So there's a battle between the old system and the new, whatever new is coming. I don't know what it's going to look like. I've got good friends on both sides of the crypto debate, Bitcoin or XRP or whatever. I mean, I know the talking points on all the sides. I think probably Bitcoin is a store of value to some point, but so is precious metals. I mean, it's been there for 5,000 years. So I don't know what the system's going to look like, but if I know one thing, it needs to be re-engineered. I mean, we need to have control of our own money. The fact that, I'm at a dinner with a client and they decline my credit card because they don't like where I'm at it that day, or I've used it too many times or whatever, that's BS, man. And then they, charge you $35 if you overdraft or whatever. That's all. It's just a huge scam, right? So that all needs to be engineered. You need to have your money in your control, and that's it. And then find a way to, police it and for terrorism and all that stuff, because that's a real issue. But I just think it's going to look completely different. So in the meantime, you need to put your money in something that will retain its value. That's a huge thing, because it's not going to be dollars.
Yeah. Could be collectibles. I mean, I know I have a client actually who bought his kids, the three of them, each a 57 Chevy. Not a bad place to store your value, right? I know they're going down a little bit, but I think at the end of the day, a 57 Chevy is probably not a bad investment.
Well, I do a lot in Eastern Europe, right? And during the last Russian devaluation, you know what they did? They all went out and bought TVs and cars with everything they had, because they knew that at least they could sell them again at a higher,
right,
exchange rate, or lower exchange rate, whatever you want to look at it. But so, yeah, it's a store of value. Where can you keep your value?
I've talked to Juan, and Juan says that Bitcoin is an invention of DARPA, just like Facebook.
It's quite possible.
I just read.
I don't know.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know. But I think a lot of these cryptos people are in, and I own some crypto. Like I'm positioned, and I've done okay in them over the last year, whatever it's been. But I mean, these things, I think that they are going to. I think they're going to be replaced with maybe something better. Is my kind of view. What are your thoughts?
I'm learning. I've got a friend who is way into the XRP camp. I don't know enough about it. I listened to him. I don't know if that's controlled or not. The whole thing with Bitcoin is it's decentralized. I don't know if that's true either. Maybe there's a back door that they can shut it down or whatever. Or maybe it's a Trojan horse to get you used to using crypto so that down the road you'll be fine with a CBDC. I just know we can't accept that. So I'm big on alternative economy creation and building ways to store value, to transact, to build wealth that's not part of whatever system is dark. And so I don't know the answers yet, to be blunt.
Fair enough. Yeah. It's almost like you need diversification in the dollar.
Yeah.
Right. You don't want to have just one form of the dollar. You want to have a diversity of dollars. Like Juan talks about an oil-backed dollar, but oil from the United States, right? Drill, baby, drill.
Yeah.
Oil from the U.S. as opposed to Saudi Arabia. That, to me, right, that's probably a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, you're essentially talking about a token, whether it's in crypto or in dollars or what they call it, silver certificate or whatever it used to be, where it represents something of value. I think that's critically important. When I was on the street, it was more, in fact, before I was woke, if you will, to actually what's going on in the last few years. The UN had
awake, not woke.
What's the awake, I guess is the right word. So, the UN or the World Bank or whatever had their, I forget what they call them, their basically baskets of currencies that they would use, special drawing rights or something like that. And so that's been on the table for a long time. What I do know is I don't trust the Chinese. I don't trust the communists. I don't trust the Europeans. I think they're moving very fascist, very quick. In fact, that you can't even say the wrong word in the UK now. They'll put you in jail. So that's garbage. So, where do you go? I mean, you got to start being creative and diversified. You got to own stuff. You got to own some land if you can defend it. You have, precious metals, probably some crypto, probably some other types of stores of value. I don't know.
Fair enough. And where can people find you? Where can people look you up and see your work? You mentioned you had some books out.
Yeah, ltoddwood.com is where all my books are, and get you a signed copy if you want. CDM.press, put us in your daily scan. Check out the 13 websites. We're growing. We have others coming. We're building our video presence. That's skyrocketing across different people that we syndicate with, like Lindell TV and this whole operation we're on now. CDM1 is our Rumble channel. Follow us there. But CDM.press has everything. You'll find everything you need there. It may take you a little while to look around. And we've got polling. We've got military stuff. We've got Hispanic. We've got it all. It's all there. We're just always trying to make it better and grow it. So thanks, man.
Perfect. We'll put that link below. And thank you, Todd, so much for showing up. And it was great chatting with you. I hope we can do it again soon.
Yeah, enjoyed it. It's good to talk to somebody who knows finance. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.
We'll see you soon.